All right. Hi, everybody. It's Adele Frizzell here with,
Tiffany here.
and today we are answering your question, do you need to drop carbs to lose weight? What are the pros and cons of keto versus low carb versus moderate carb versus high carb diets? If you've worked with us and you're listening to this, you probably know the answer already. So feel free to comment. Do you need to drop carbs to lose weight? Yes or no? All right. We hope we get a good turnout for this. I did invite quite a few people on my mailing list, and we would love your comments. Have you ever done keto? Was it a positive experience for you? Did the wheels come off real quick, or were you able to stick to it long enough to lose weight? I'm very curious.
And if you have done keto in the past and you transitioned away from keto, what was your deciding factor for that?
Right. And then what happened after you came off keto? Did you have a big pop on the scale, a big weight rebound? We would just love to know. Okay, so let's first talk about and define, so we're all on the same page when it comes to what is a low carb diet, a very low carb diet, a moderate carb diet, a high carb diet, because actually there is no, this is crazy, but there is no clear consensus on what defines a low carb diet. However, most professionals agree to the following percentages of total calorie intake. And then I'm going to, before we go into this, I want to explain, why do we go with percentages? Why not just say, well, you should have 400 calories of carbs a day, or you should have 800 calories of carbs a day?
Well,
Do you know why?
Yeah. So we do have a couple people on. So Jeannie and Patty are on. Hi, ladies. Thanks for joining us. I'm curious if you guys can answer Adele's question. Why would we use percentages versus a set amount? And we say this is what you have to hit each day.
You're right. Because that's what happens with keto. People say you should have, 20 carbs or less, 20 net carbs or less, that kind of thing. But why are we actually going to decide on percentages of total calorie intake? Why is that the preferred method?
Hi, Maureen.
All right. Well, I'm going to answer it for you. The reason is we all have different energy intake needs. I know a bodybuilder who eats almost 4,000 calories a day. And I know ladies who can only eat 1,600 calories a day. So what we actually want to look at is a percentage of total daily intake. So a very low carbohydrate diet is less than 10% of your, is basically 10% of your calories come from carbohydrates. That's 20 to 50 grams a day, roughly, in carbohydrates. A low carbohydrate is less than 26% of your calories coming from carbohydrates. So that's basically less than 130 grams of carbs a day for most people. And that might be shocking for people because they might consider a low carb diet is around 50 grams of carbs a day, but actually less than 130 grams a day. And Tiffany and I get a lot of clients doing a low carbohydrate diet. And they learn after working with us, it's not necessary to manage their weight, that they have to keep restricting their carbs, but more on that later. So Tiffany, do you want to tell people what a moderate carbohydrate diet is in terms of percentage of total caloric intake?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I do want to do that, it's Patty and Maureen both dropped in the comments right as you started talking about it. And Patty said, because we all have calorie needs, and you nailed it, Patty. Maureen said it's based on your goal weight, not necessarily for your carb intake. It's based on total calories where the percentages break down those. So for moderate carb intake, the recommendation is 26 to 44% of your total calories should come from carbs to be moderate. And high carb is considered 45% of your calories or more.
Exactly. And that percentage fluctuates whether you're maintaining your weight, trying to put on mass, or losing weight, right? But for reference, the Institute of Medicine proposes that Americans obtain 45 to 65% of their calories from carbohydrates. That would be considered a high carb diet, which actually a lot of Americans are following, but they're also following a high fat diet. And that might be why 70% of us are obese or overweight, because we're eating an excess of calories as well. But in our coaching programs, we recommend clients don't drop their carbs to less than 100 grams a day in order to maintain a weight loss. And do you know why this is? Now, we're not hard and fast on this 100 grams a day, but it's kind of a minimum safety net that we recommend for health purposes. The reason is carbohydrates are a great source of nutrients and vitamins and fiber. You can't get fiber from fats. You can't get fiber from protein. You only get it from carbohydrates. When you drop your carbohydrates quite low, your chances of getting enough fiber in to help your digestive health are quite low. And so you want to aim for at least a minimal amount of carbohydrates, in our opinion, okay? And that would be for maintenance. If you're trying to diet, our recommendations are a little bit different. Okay, so let's put this into context. 100 grams a day is still considered a low carbohydrate diet. And if you're eating 2,000 calories a day, that's going to be quite low, right? For people whose calories are around 1,600 calories a day before, to manage their weight, 100 grams of carbs is only 25% of your total daily calories. This is a low carb lifestyle. So even when we're helping our clients to eat more carbohydrates and we're getting them to 100 grams and they start getting nervous, what they don't realize is 100 grams is still pretty low. And honestly, you don't have to worry about whether you have a low carb, moderate carb, high carb diet, as long as your calories are equal. So we're going to go into that. But first, let me share with you a little bit of a visual here. I'm going to share my desktop. So we have this graphic I'd like you to look at. Very low carb intake, 10% or less of caloric intake right there. 26% of your calories would be coming from carbs, would be considered a low carb diet. And that will work whether you're eating 3,000 calories, 2,000 calories, 1,000 calories. If 26% of your calories are coming from carbs, it's still a low carb diet. Moderate carb, 26 to 44%, and high carb is 45 to 65%.
So some quick feedback from the comments real fast. Linda commented, OMG, thanks for that tip about carbs creating the fiber. She was just wondering that recently. So it's a great that, that stuck out to you. That's awesome.
Yeah. The micronutrients you get from carbohydrates, and maybe we should define carbohydrates for people, because a lot of people think it's just bread and rice and potatoes. It's not. It's vegetables and fruits and legumes. So, you get your fiber from them, you get micronutrients, vitamins, things that you don't get from fats and protein. So really important that your diet has a little of everything. Okay.
Yeah. And, we talk a lot about eat the rainbow with our clients. And most of the things that are colorful are carbs.
Yeah. Yeah. And different colored fruits and vegetables have different vitamins in them. So having a diversity of colored fruit, colored vegetables is really a good way to go. So how many carbs should you eat? Well, you're going to hate this answer, but it depends. And let me tell you what it depends on. It depends on your athletic goals, whether you're sedentary or an athlete. It depends on your weight goals. Do you want to lose weight, gain weight, manage your weight? And it depends on your personal preferences, most of all. So I have some good news for you. You can still lose weight on a high carb diet. You can still lose weight on a very low carb diet. In fact, the research is very clear on this. People lose equal amounts of weight when calories are equalized. If you need to cut calories, 500 calories a day to lose weight, about a pound a week, we'll say, it doesn't matter where those calories come from. Let's say you need 2,000 calories to manage your weight. You decide to go to 1,500 calories a day to lose weight. Doesn't matter doesn't matter that much, okay, at all. Whether it's a high carb, low fat diet, a moderate carb, moderate fat diet, what was the other one? A low fat, high carb, vice versa. Doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, you need 1,500 calories. there is a little bit of nuance to this, okay? There is some genetics at play, but this is getting so into the weeds that I almost hate to mention it. But some people are better responders to a lower fat diet. They actually lose weight more easily than if they're a greater portion of those calories come from fats. But this is not significant, okay? What is significant is if you are athletic, you're better served with higher carbs.
Let's talk about the why behind that real fast.
Yeah.
So I think that look at it this way. If you're someone who runs marathons and you want to lose a little bit of fluff, but you don't want to stop your training, you're gonna need energy to get through your training. You're gonna have to support your body and support your fuel. So whenever you're dieting, you're probably gonna need more carbs than someone who is sedentary. So that's definitely something to be mindful of whenever you are dieting, is you have to kind of find that breakdown that works for you and for your lifestyle. And not everybody's lifestyle is the same. So that's what we mean by athletic versus sedentary.
Yeah. For me, I need more carbs, even in a fat loss phase, to support my training, or I really start to feel out of gas in the gym very quickly. And that means that I can't push myself as well, which means I am not building the muscle I want or getting the strength I want. And so I need a higher amount of fat. I would rather a higher amount of carbs. I would rather drop my fats. But if you're sedentary or not that active or not a competitive athlete, then I think what you need to think about are the health considerations more than anything. Okay. And so that's where we recommend a minimum amount of carbohydrates for the nutrients and for the fiber. As you can see, we're probably not recommending a very low carb diet, but actually for dieting, for the dieting phase, we don't mind. If that's what you like and it helps you lose weight, more power to you. But I want to demystify this whole weight loss thing about going keto in a second. Okay. But for maintenance, I would not recommend a very low carb diet. It's really, for most people, unsustainable. Research shows that most people cannot sustain a ketogenic diet longer than 6 months. And almost everybody cheats now and then, because let's face it, you have a beer, you're off keto. You know, it's difficult socially. It's difficult for most people to commit to as a lifestyle. As a diet, a short-term diet, it can work and it can be effective. So let's talk about what cases and situations where a ketogenic approach might be effective for some individuals, but not all. Okay. A ketogenic diet will result in quick weight loss on the scale in the first couple weeks. Why is this?
Well, I like to tell my clients, whenever you think of the word carbs, I want you to think of the entire word carbohydrates. For every 2 to 3 grams of carbs, or for every gram of carbs you consume, your body holds on to 3 to 4 grams of water. So whenever you limit your carb intake, which is what most people think of whenever they think of keto, then you're automatically reducing how much water your body is holding on to. So we have that initial whoosh on the scale, you're dropping a lot of water weight initially.
Yeah. For the first week or two, it's probably not even any real fat loss. You're just losing a whole bunch of water weight. That's super exciting for people, but they misunderstand. That's not true weight loss. It's weight loss, sorry. It's not true fat loss. Okay. It's a lot of water weight coming off initially. And in fact, after about 6 months, when they took subjects who were on a high carb, low fat or a high fat, low carb diet, and they equalized the calories, the amount of weight loss was roughly the same. So it really comes down to what can you adhere to better. That is the number one thing. So people who get really religious about a dietary approach, they shouldn't. They just found one that worked for them. So they're super excited about it and they want to tell all their friends and they want to tell their followers and stuff like that. It worked for you. It's not going to work for everyone. In fact, a keto diet, like we've had clients who gained weight on a ketogenic diet. And their blood lipids, their triglycerides, everything got worse. Okay, so it is definitely not for everyone. And I have some research to support this that I actually want to share with you guys. Okay, so let's talk about some of the studies. I will link to these studies if you want to review them in more detail yourself. Anything I missed there, Tiff?
I don't think so. I think that you're covering everything really good. Jeannie did mention when we asked the question about the rapid drop on the scale that it was due to water. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So I think where a ketogenic diet can be helpful is in suppressing the appetite in some individuals, but not all, okay? In some individuals, dropping the carbs super low can put them into ketosis, which then can suppress their appetite. But again, not everyone, okay? And so I'm just going to share this study with you right here on my screen. Okay. Do ketogenic diets really suppress the appetite? A systematic review and meta-analysis. So a meta-analysis is where they look at all the research in that particular area, and they review all the research studies, and they come to conclusions. Based on all of this, this is what we can draw as a conclusion. And here it was, a very low energy diet. That's just where calories are dropped really low. And a ketogenic low carbohydrate diet are two dietary strategies that have been associated with the suppression of appetite. Okay, so sometimes, and we've talked about this for our 2x2 program as well, you don't necessarily have to go into ketosis to suppress your appetite. You can also do a very low energy or very low calorie diet. And this is why we tell people for the Transformer program, you may not even need HCG, because a very low calorie diet, especially one with higher protein, can suppress the appetite.
We've actually had clients go through the entire Transformer program, 11, 12 weeks, very low calories without using HCG and having very minimal hunger. So
exactly. So what they found that individuals were less hungry and exhibited greater fullness and satiety while adhering to the very low energy or very low calorie diet. And individuals adhering to the ketogenic low carb diet were less hungry and had a reduced desire to eat. Okay, so they didn't exhibit much change in appetite, but what happened is, so they say there is a clinical benefit of a ketogenic diet in preventing an increase in appetite. But what they say here, future studies should investigate the minimum level of ketosis required to achieve appetite suppression during ketogenic weight loss diets, as this could enable inclusion of a greater variety of healthy carbohydrate containing foods into the diet. So where's the data that I'm trying to find? Absolute changes in appetite were small, that they occurred within the context of energy restriction. So really it came down to the energy restriction. It's looking but the ketogenic diet could be helpful in helping with the appetite. So that's some benefit for some people, okay? You could do a ketogenic diet without absolutely dropping your calories, or you could drop your calories and also have your appetite be suppressed. But there were some negative outcomes for people on, let me flip to that. Effects, this study here is effects of different levels of carbohydrate restriction on mood when in ketosis and carbohydrate withdrawal. And what they found basically was that people's moods really tanked on a ketogenic diet. Participants were allocated a very low, or moderately low carbohydrate diet. And what they found was right here at the end, I'm going to share this with you, that the diets where carbs were dropped 5% to 5% of your total energy or lower, actually those people had worse moods than the people who kept their carbs between 15 and 25% of their total energy for the day. Okay. So the conclusion, therefore, is that a reduced carbohydrate diet should be prescribed by need rather than the desire to mitigate symptoms of carbohydrate withdrawal. So I think the takeaway in this is that if you're going to go into ketosis, expect to have some negative impacts to your mood. That is one of the downsides of going into ketosis. One of the upsides is for some people, the appetite can be suppressed, which makes it easier to stick with a diet long enough to get the results you're looking for. But they come at a price. They come at a price of mood. And as we know, it can also come at a price of your energy getting really low and your performance suffering, especially if you're at all training and athletic. Let's just pop into this one. Ketogenic low carb diets have no metabolic advantage over non-ketogenic low carb diets. Okay, so basically what we're saying here is that a ketogenic diet is equally effective in reducing body weight as a non-ketogenic diet. Okay, so in one control group, what they had was they gave the ketogenic subjects a diet, which was 60% of their energy came from fat macros and 5% came from carbs. And the non-ketogenic diet, they gave them 30% fat and 40% carbs. And it was only 6 weeks, but what was cool about this was the participants were sedentary and they controlled all of their food intake for 24 hours, which is unusual in a study. It's very costly to do this kind of thing. But it means that people's calories were strictly controlled and observed. So what they found was both diets were equally effective in reducing body weight and improving insulin resistance. But the ketogenic diet actually was associated with several adverse metabolic and emotional effects. So again, this mood marker is coming up, right? People's emotions, moods were negatively impacted. And the metabolic functions were also negatively impacted. So what happened there was they had higher inflammation in their bodies. Their lipids did not look good. Okay. And that's because of the high fats. And there are some people genetically who are going to actually get even worse with a high fat diet in terms of lipids. But across the board, all the subjects had negative impacts on their lipids. So again, I would say another strike against a keto diet, it gives you a rapid weight loss initially, but in the long term, after a few weeks, there's no difference in terms of weight loss.
So something to bring up here is, since we are referencing the actual science here, is some people may say, well, there's evidence that proves the exact opposite of what you're saying. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think this is where people get almost religious about the type of diet they're doing and they want to prove it. So then they cherry pick research. But the actual abundance of research when a meta-analysis is conducted indicates these things. Indicates that ketogenic diet is not superior to a moderate carb approach, for example, when it comes to weight loss. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the sum total of research, that is the conclusion. But we can always find research which has outliers, and some research is conducted well and some isn't. Some research is superior because it's using randomized controlled variables in the research, and some aren't. Some people tell people this is what you should adhere to, but they don't know if they actually did. So the best research is when they can actually control the food intake and things like that. Also, use of different subjects. For example, you could use males average age 25 versus females average age 52. Mm-hmm. So it really depends. And I think you need to sort of pull out from the micro and look at the macro. And when we look at, the International Society of Sports Nutrition, they have a position stand on this. And it says, quote, a wide range of dietary approaches, low fat, low carb, or ketogenic, and all points in between can be similarly effective for improving body composition, unquote. Okay.
I think that's fantastic that you kind of were able to point that out. And I think it's important to note too, that you've got some people out there that are they've got their blinders on, like this is what they do, this is what works for them, so it has to work for everyone else, and everything else is just crap. But at the end of the day, I think that it's human nature to not want to be wrong.
Yeah.
So sometimes they get so stuck in their own lane that they stop looking at the outside science. They stop looking at the opposing views and taking in that information as well. So in a lot of the keto people that are strictly keto, that's the only way to go. They stop looking at all of the meta analysis, and they only look at the keto specific analysis. And that's where a lot of the misinformation starts to come in.
And there are people whose livelihoods are depend on pushing this agenda even further. And there's $1 billion keto industry. You can't walk into the grocery store without finding keto drinks, keto bars, keto this, keto that, and it's not going away. And we have people who have published books, people whose entire business is based on working with clients so that they get into ketosis to lose weight. Like I said, it'll work, but at what cost, right? You have to look at your mood, your energy, your blood lipids, your health markers, how well you can adhere to it. Are you absolutely miserable? There are other ways to do it that will give you the exact same result at the end of the day. The diet that works best for you is the diet that you can maintain and stick to consistently long enough to achieve the results you're looking for.
So Patty said, wow, what a connection with mood. She was feeling very moody this last round of low carb eating. Thank you for this info. And then she said, I know a lot of people who preach low carb and claim they are carbohydrate intolerant. I've heard of gluten, but I've never heard of carbohydrate intolerant. That's new. She had a doctor tell her that she did not tolerate carbs, which isn't true, she says. Do you know if this can be the case? And if so, how common is it?
So, people who are carb intolerant, I used to believe in that too, I have to confess, and it isn't true. What you do have is people who flirt with low carb and ketogenic diets become a little bit less metabolically flexible the longer they stay in those diets. So when you reintroduce carbs, they can their weight can jump up on the scale quite quickly as they introduce carbs. So we actually do phase in people who have a history of low carbs a bit more slowly than others, but not that much more slowly. And the goal is to bring back the carbs. It's as soon as you're eating carbs again, your metabolism will adjust. It just takes some people a little bit longer, but people are not really carb intolerant. Like that's it for them for the rest of their lives. No, what it is their energy needs are so low, probably because they're fairly sedentary, that they actually, they can't have many carbs or they start to gain weight because they can't actually have many calories. Remember, carbs are just a percentage of your total calories. So for some people, if like our clients who say, I gain weight really easily, typically are quite sedentary or aren't that aware of how many calories they're consuming on a daily basis. And so they're overeating for their energy needs, but they're not actually it's natural that they would gain weight because they're not burning off. Their body just doesn't need that much energy coming in that they're consuming. So the more you lift weights, the more active you are, the more you can burn those carbohydrates up like jet fuel. That's what it comes down to.
I think that it's important to note here is Patty said that her doctor told her.
Yeah.
And this is something that you and I have talked about quite a bit is, just like we specialize in helping individuals lose and maintain their weight, like we have a little bit of knowledge and experience with that. Physicians have their own specialization, right? And they usually get very minimal training in nutrition. So
they get 4 hours of nutrition in med school.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, okay, that's cool. But if your physician ever says anything like that to you, I would recommend getting a second opinion from a dietitian if it's something that you're truly concerned about, because a dietitian, that is their whole scope of practice. So, and they
Yeah.
spend lots of time.
Unfortunately, about 40% of the diet books out there right now are written by doctors who are not staying in their scope. I think personally, they got some weird ideas about nutrition, and they're going off on these huge tangents. Yeah.
Yeah. So just the more you know. Patty said that she's sleeping better, her moods are better, and she crushed the gym today eating 150 grams of healthy carbs. That's awesome.
That's
Patty.
great. That's great. And you notice a difference as soon as you increase your carbs. So let's talk about that. When we are reverse dieting our clients from a very low calorie diet to maintenance, we are reintroducing more carbs every week. And what happens every time, Tiffany?
People lose weight. They're losing
They lose weight and
they
they sleep better and
Yep.
have more energy. They
Yeah.
all reported, I can't believe how much energy I have. And they actually want to move more. And that's because carbohydrates are your best form of energy. Well, calories are important for energy, but carbs they really make a difference to your energy levels. And so when we start bringing those up, the difference is night and day for people. And that's where some people realize maybe they've been under eating for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they don't want to move very much because they're not adequately fueled, which means they can only eat so many calories because they live a fairly sedentary lifestyle. When we start fueling these ladies properly, they start to show the desire to move more spontaneously. Like, oh, I think I'm going to start running. Oh, I actually want to work out.
Mm-hmm.
They want to put that fuel to good use. So that's always an interesting thing.
Yep.
All right.
Well, I
Any other
appreciate
questions?
all the comments and everything in this section today. Thanks for being so interactive on this call. That was great.
Yeah, it was awesome. All right. Well, I hope that was helpful. Let us know if you have any questions. We'll be monitoring the comments. Just a heads up, we will not be doing a Facebook Live next week. All right. And I hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.